this down. Do you want to move the lectern a little bit so that there's room for the computers? Oh, you're up there now. Why did you put that one on the table? Okay, just so people can hear, because this is the one. I think they'll be able to.
It's okay. I think it's okay.
I just don't want it to fall off.
Mine's well insured. You go for it.
Thank you, Madam Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters. Welcome guest Mohammed, welcome guest Sydney. Building an experience from the stage. So what does that mean? And what kind of experiences have you had from the stage? Has anybody had a unique experience when somebody is giving a speech? Well, it's making the audience part of your presentation. It's inviting them in. I was at one workshop with Ed Tate, and what he did is he had people cross the room, but nobody could do it the same way. So some people strolled, some people somersaulted, some people skipped. Every person had to do it a different way. He was talking about creativity and flexibility. And so that anchored his speech in people's mind because right from the beginning, they were a part of his presentation. So when you're doing a presentation, or actually, Seth Godin said you are either remarkable or invisible. So we either stand out or nobody sees us. I say you're either remarkable or forgettable. How many speeches have you heard 5 minutes later you cannot remember what the speech was about? They didn't anchor it in your mind. They didn't have you become a part of that speech. So what we're going to learn today is how do you make yourself remarkable? How do you make yourself rememberable? So maybe you're going to have, at the end of this presentation, I will have a couple moments for question and answer. So if you have questions during the presentation, please just write them down and I'll get to them at the end. So what is your intent? Why this speech at this time to this audience? Whenever you're a speaker, you're an influencer, you're trying to move people, you're trying to change them. You're either trying to change their emotions, you're trying to change their behavior, or their perspective. So what are you trying to change? What do you have that somebody in your audience needs to learn about? What is your intent? Where do you want to go? Now there's usually more than one intent. Like a professional speaker, his intent might be, I need to get clients. I need to get another gig. The audience's intention is the reason they're there to listen to him or her. Why did they show up? What do they hope to gain? So that is their intent. So before the presentation, what should you do? You want to start making friends with your audience. You want to go around and say, hi, I'm Sarah. I'm so pleased to meet you today. What's your name?
Roxanne.
Roxanne, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Sarah.
When you do this, you put a friend in the audience. If they're all strangers, but you can, throughout your speech, go, Roxanne, or Mohammed, or Bob. Everybody feels closer to you. Everybody feels connected. Everybody feels included. And so you want to include people into your speech as much as possible. So go out and befriend them. Make them a part of your speech. This is when I was at an event called Champion Lady and the Champs. And they brought me up on stage. And they were doing an exercise called Over the Top. Because most of us, when we give a speech, we're a little bit too monotone. So they were teaching us how to exaggerate, how to go way over the top. And this Ed, who's sitting next to me, he was jumping up and down on the stage when he wanted me to put more emotion in there. It was a fun experience, but what he did was he made me part of his speech on how to put emotions into a presentation. You can do something like that. Invite somebody up to do an activity with you. And then address their concerns. What are they thinking about? Did half of the team that you're talking to get laid off this morning? Or did something good happen? Or maybe it's something about you. There is a comedian called Henry Cho. He's Vietnamese and he grew up in Tennessee. And he sounds like the typical stereotype of Hollywood. He sounds like he just got off the set of Dukes of Hazzard. And what he does when he first takes the stage is he says, I know you see something is wrong here. You hear something is wrong. He has this very deep Southern accent you're not expecting, and he addresses it right off. And then he tells the audience, don't worry, you'll get used to it. You'll be okay. So what other things might be something that you need to approach right up front? If you were going to get up here and something was a little bit different or odd about you, you want to address it. So people aren't going, that's so strange. I wonder what, they're not thinking in their head. I saw Ryan Avery. He's a champion, it was like 2000 something. And right away he said, you'll notice that I'm rather effeminate. And we're going, yeah, we noticed. My wife noticed also. So right away he addressed what we were thinking about and put it behind us. Other concerns might be who's in the audience. I mean, my goodness, we don't know. What type of distractions are there? People are looking at their phones, they're talking to each other. Is the room too hot or too cold? What's the environment like? Is it loud and noisy? Can you see the stage? One thing you should be doing when you give a speech is sit in the four corners of the room. Because what you can tell by that is you can tell, one, can people hear me? And two, can people see me? Because when people cannot see you, if they cannot see your face, it's harder for them to hear. I was at a speech given by Patricia Fripp, who is one of the most well-known speech coaches in the world, probably. Her PowerPoint was at the front of the room, and she was at the back. And we're kind of looking at her like, usually people stand in front of their PowerPoint. But she explained to us that if people can't see my face, they can't hear as well. We take a lot of cues from the face. So make sure that people can see you well, that it's a clear vision. So the environment, how noisy, how cold, how... Also, there might be some tension. Maybe people don't like each other. Maybe Roxanne and Bob have been fighting, and they haven't put that behind you. So it might be between the audience members. It might be between an audience member and the speaker. Mary's known me for over 25 years. There's things she knows about me. She might be up there going, yeah, well, Sarah, you would not believe what Sarah's doing. So that might be a distraction. So between audience members. Next, it might be something, a disconnect between what I'm trying to, my content, what I'm teaching, what I'm speaking about, and somebody else's beliefs. They might be going up there, Sarah, you just don't know anything. Why would you say that? I learned it completely different. Some people in the audience will not agree with you, and that's okay. So think about, what are the distractions? What are people thinking about? They're thinking about their work, they're thinking about their family, they're thinking about their lives. So that means be remarkable. so you're not forgettable. So how are you going to approach the stage? Many times I've seen people come up here, they're running up to the stage, and they're talking even before they get to the lectern. Now, what does that imply to you? Does that show that I have confidence in myself when I run up there and start speaking erratically? Kathy, would you think I'm credible if I spoke like that?
No, because it would be distracting.
Yes, it would
You
be a big distraction.
Right, it's not as professional.
Right. When you're approaching the stage, that's an important moment because you're transferring from being somebody in the crowd to being an expert in the spotlight. And so it is a powerful moment where you can either engage with your audience because they're already judging you. They're judging you from the moment you stepped on the stage. So how are you dressed? How are you walking? How are you holding yourself? Do you look confident? Or I had one lawyer give a speech like this. Now, I took one look at her and said, I would never have her represent me in a court of law. Because right away I thought, weak woman. Now, I don't know if she's weak, but that's my perception. And that was the perception she was giving just by how she was standing. So how do you approach the stage? Oops, I did something wrong. Another thing, you must be authentic. Nobody came here to listen to Les Brown wannabe. If they wanted to hear Les Brown, they'd go hear Les Brown. All you can do is be the authentic you. People want your perspective. They want your ideas. Yes, I pull off of a lot of knowledge from other people, but it's how I interpret that knowledge, how I present it, that people come to listen to me and come to listen to you. They don't want another copy of a copy. So the moment before, that moment when you're standing in front of the stage and you're looking out at that audience, what are you thinking? Do you have the right mindset? Are you focused on yourself or are you focused on your audience? Because if you're focused on yourself, your anxiety will skyrocket. Because you're going, how does my hair look? Am I saying this correctly? Oh no, I forgot a line. Nobody in your audience knows that. When you focus on your audience, what can Bob take away from here? What can Mary take away? What can Sydney use? When you have that idea, you're going out into the audience. Your energy is going out into the audience instead of being trapped inside yourself. So use that moment before to set yourself up. I learned from an actress that what she does, and she taught me, is when I get in front of an audience, I breathe in their energy, I breathe out my energy to the audience, I breathe in their energy, I think about a mantra. And mine is usually, let's have fun, because I can be pretty dry at times. Though I never admit it. But my husband is in the back of the room, so he'd probably tell you differently. So think about those things. What do you want to connect? How do you want to connect with your audience? That's what the moment before is. This is Ed Tate. He is the 2000 world champion of public speaking. And he does an 8-second pause. He gets up there and he actually looks around at everybody in the audience for 8 seconds. That seems like an eternity. But when your eyes are scanning like this, laterally, your anxiety drops Because when we walk, our eyes automatically do that. We're going forward. We're pushing forward. So that's how we can also deal with anxiety. Also what that does is when he's quiet, all of a sudden the audience is going, what's going on? They're putting down their papers, they're putting down their cell phones, and they're looking at him. What are you gonna do next? What are you doing? Why are you silent? It's the contrast between the busyness and the silence that gets them their attention. The emotions behind the words. This is Cheryl Brinkley, and she is a professor at McAllister College. She teaches drama. And she told me a story about Johnny Depp and Edward Scissorhands. And when Johnny wanted to have a certain emotion for that Edward Scissorhands, he went to a little puppy. Because the emotions were, oh, love me, love me, love me, I love you, love you, love you. And then when he got in trouble, it was like, oh, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. Those were the emotions he was pulling on. So now we're going to do just a little bit of an experiment. I want you to say no. Now in your mind, I want you to think you're in a dangerous place. Maybe it's dark, maybe it's an alley, maybe it's, it's dirty and dungy and somebody huge is coming towards you. They're coming towards you. Now say no. How would you say no?
No.
No. All right. Now, our next image, a little kitten is nibbling on your toes. How would you say no?
No.
Do you feel the difference? It's not the words that makes the difference. It's the emotion behind the words. So if you want vocal variety in your speech, what is that emotion that is right behind the words? Is it joy? Is it concern? Is it fear? Think of the emotion and bring it out. Build pictures in your mind. And they will guide the emotions. They will guide your voice to where you want it to be. So, what is your message? What is your message for the speech? Well, my message is be remarkable. Don't be forgettable. Be remarkable. Now, the premise of my speech is every Toastmaster can be remarkable. All they have to do is learn the skills, because speaking is a learned skill. It's not some fancy, airy-fairy thing. You might not start at the best place. My first speech, moment of silence. Not where I wanted to start. But you build your skills. You keep going. This happened. I tried this, it worked here. I tried that, it didn't work. Okay, so what is your message? That is the most important element of your speech. That is what either makes you a champion at contests or a bystander. Next, a foundational phrase. Foundational phrase needs to be short, less than 10 words. It needs to be witty. It needs to be something that people can remember. So when I say Martin Luther King Jr., what phrase comes up in your mind? Everyone
I
should have
have
a
a
dream.
dream.
So that's his foundational phrase. He said it 11 times in his speech. He did not say it at the beginning. He was more than halfway through his speech before he gave that line, I have a dream. But that's the line that makes us remember. That's the line that hooks our brains to his speech, to that history, to that era of civil rights. That's how we remember it. So be remarkable, not forgettable. By now you should know my foundational phrase. Right, be remarkable, not forgettable. That's my foundational phrase. I want something where Roxanne could maybe next week go talk to a friend and said, yeah, I was listening to this speech Sarah gave me. And she was talking about something about like, be remarkable, not forgettable. Because if she can remember that foundational phrase, then she'll start remembering a little bit more details. Every speech should have a foundational phrase. And when you're doing a very long presentation, you might have a foundational phrase for every point you make. So if you'll have an overarching foundational phrase, and then for the smaller points, you'll have a smaller foundational phrase. Other foundational phrases I've heard was, change small, change often. That's Craig Valentine. Your dream is not for sale. That's also Craig Valentine. He's one of my favorite speakers. So, I got two of them. So, you've got your foundational phrase. How are you going to pique their interest? How are you going to hook them in? Because your first words are the most important words you speak. So don't do what they call them unpleasant pleasantries. Well, Hannah, isn't it a wonderful day out? I'm so glad you all came today. Now, what does that tell you about my speech? I'm wandering all over the place. You want to start out right away with, you're either remarkable or forgettable, so what is your choice? You want to start out maybe with a story. You want to start out with a quote. You want to start out with a shocking statement. There was a lady on Fox News. I didn't want to say that. There was a lady with a TED Talk, and she said, when people learn what I do as a job, as a career, they hate me. In fact, the better I do my job, the more they hate me. I'm thinking, what could this woman be? Does anybody have any ideas? What? A newscaster. No. Well, you actually did get it. I was thinking IRS agent. Yeah, something like that. Something that brings disaster.
I was thinking lawyer.
Lawyer, there you go. So you're thinking in a certain way. Well, she had this statement. Well, what she was she was a newscaster on Fox News. She was also a lesbian and a liberal. She didn't last very long. For a story, there was Ricky Isaias, and he was up in that plane that crashed. And he starts out his TED Talk with, imagine you're at 3,000 feet. Imagine the plane is filling up with smoke. Imagine the engines are going clang, 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 clang. Now, are you interested in hearing the rest of the speech? Just by the way he set it up, those first words, work on them, refine them, polish them, because they will either pull in your audience or they will turn your audience off. Imagine is a wonderful word. You can take people anywhere you want to take them, because in their imagination, anything is possible. Imagine you're at the peak of Mount Everest with me, and it's really cool. Imagine we are rafting down Colorado River. Imagine I'm 6 feet tall. That one you might not believe. But imagine can take people anywhere. Then you want to give them a roadmap. And a roadmap just tells you where you're going to take people. People get distracted. Even in your speech, even if you're a very compelling speaker, they're daydreaming, they get interrupted, whatever. So if at the beginning you give them a roadmap, they can follow you more easily. And when they get off track, they can come back and find you. It can be as simple as Willie Jolly. His was dream, decide, do. So you knew at the beginning of his speech it was going to be dreaming. What are you dreaming? The second was going to be make a decision. How are you going to decide? What decision are you going to make? And then the third one, go out and do it. Just go out and do it. That was his roadmap. It can be something as simple as, I'm going to take you on a journey through Spain. First we will stop at the ocean. Next we'll see, I don't know Spain well enough to do this. But you give them a roadmap. Or you give them 3 keys. I'm going to give you 5 keys to training a dog, how not to bark. First, we're going to observe the dog and see what his triggers are. Second key is whatever. You can have keys, you can build tools, you can build ladders, you can do whatever you want. But give people that roadmap so that they can follow you. And then think about, who cares? That's what the audience is thinking, who cares? Why should you listen to me? I need to think about what are your needs? What are your expectations? What do you want from me? What do you need to take away? And am I fulfilling those desires? Because if I don't have anything that you want to hear, it doesn't matter how good I am. If I'm not connecting with you, I'm boring you. If I'm not giving you something that you can use in your life to make it a little bit better, my speech is useless. If you don't learn anything, if you don't think differently, if you don't feel differently, if you don't act differently, in some way, even if it's just a small way, then what was the use in listening to me? So who cares? That should always be in your mind. Who cares? And why do they care? Next, anchors. Anchors are things that keep things in your mind. One is a story. Another, I remember, I was at a real estate workshop, probably 35 years ago, and they gave me a little round pen. It was black and gold, and it had "to it" on it. Their whole presentation was get around to it. Now that was a wonderful anchor. I lost the pen years ago, but I can still imagine it. I can still see it, and I still think about it now and then about getting around to it. Another one might be an analogy. What do you think about a Forrest Gump? He said an analogy in there about chocolates. What did he say?
Life is like a box of chocolates.
See? It's stuck. That's an anchor. Anything that brings back memories. Because once you can get that memory back, you can build on it. And then, do you want a question and answer period? Not for me, not right now. I'm going to tell you how to set it up. Do you remember at the beginning of my speech I said at the end we're going to have time for questions? This is to prepare your audience so that they know that there will be questions at the end. So as you go along, they can prepare, or they can relax and say, I can ask her that at the end. I don't have to worry about that. Now, you do not want to end on a question and answer, because you might have somebody in the audience who's kind of a smartass and goes way off topic. There was one lady, I wasn't looking at you, Roxanne. There was one lady who was talking about how to help children with behavior problems. And somebody in the audience, the last question was, would this work on dogs? And she's like, I don't know. She definitely did not want her presentation to end with people wondering if they could train a dog. This was about children and behavior problems. So what you do is you ask, you give them time, you let them ask their questions. But before you do, you start the session like this. In a moment, we're going to have time for 5 questions or 5 minutes of questions or however you want to set it up. And then I will finish my presentation. So what this does, it alerts them that you're not done yet. Because people will start in the question and answer leaving. But if they know you still have more to say, that you still have a portion of your presentation to give, they will stick around. So what happens when this guy is there and there are no questions? I look around and there is not one question in the whole room. Well, you answer your own question. You can say something like, you know, in previous presentations, I've been asked, why is an intent important? And then you answer your own question. You're priming the pump. Because maybe people were a little bit shy to ask the first question. But when you answer the question, then you can say, are there any other questions? And they're more likely to get questions from other people if they're a little bit shy or they are a little bit hesitant. So ask your questions first. The other thing you can do is plant somebody to ask a question. I could have come in and said, Kathy, when I get to the question and answer, can you ask this question? Thank you. So you plant a question. She asked the question, I answered it, and then the next person feels more comfortable asking the next question. So think about how are you going to do the question and answer period. Also now, think about the pace elements. Our brains, we want something new, we want something different. We're looking around for something else. And so pace elements are a way to do that. It's a change. Every time there is a change, that is a change in pace elements. It could be a story. Or maybe when I ask Kathy a question and then she answers, that's a pace element. Any change. If I do a poll, or if I say type in chat, what is the color of the sky, whatever, people will answer. You do a phone share where you actually have your phone and say, I was at the park the other day and I saw this gorgeous flower. Depending on how big your audience is, of course. You can do a video share. You can go on the web and do a search share. All those types of things. You can do something like raise your hand if you've ever ridden a